All right, I think we can probably get started now. Hello, everyone. Thank you for making time today to join our webinar. The focus of today's program is going to be on implementing NetSuite's ERP within the furniture retail industry, with a specific spotlight on the journey of Brown Furniture, a furniture retailer based in Northeast America. Today's event will be about 30 minutes in length, and the bulk of the conversation is going to be with the owner of Brown Furniture, Brad Nelson. We'll leave some time for Q&A at the end of our discussion, and you'll want to make sure you hang around until the end, as there will be a giveaway once we're finished with the Q&A. Note that all of the lines will be muted, so please type your question in the chat box throughout the interview, and we'll be sure to share those during the Q&A portion. My name is Patrick Hicks, and I am one of your hosts today. I am a NetSuite managing consultant for my company, Bresatech, and we are a NetSuite Alliance partner, where our primary focus is creating solutions that truly empower our clients. My role involves a partnered engagement with our clients to help transform their needs and challenges into solutions that can scale within the NetSuite platform. Speaking of NetSuite, I'm now going to pass the virtual mic over to my co-host from NetSuite, Haley Knoll. Haley, can you please introduce yourself?
Thanks, Patrick. Happy to be here. My name's Haley Knoll. I am our Alliance Marketing Manager at NetSuite. Essentially, my day-to-day job is working on marketing content and co-branding with our great Alliance partners like we have today. So as Patrick mentioned, the bulk of today's conversation will be with Brad Nelson from Brown Furniture. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. Brad, can you give a brief background on yourself and Brown Furniture for the audience?
Sure. My name is Brad Nelson. I bought Brown Furniture in the fall of 2018. Prior to owning Brown Furniture, I've actually been primarily in the electronics industry, selling IT equipment and software for a company called Connections, PC Connections, for a number of years, as well as working for a company called GN Netcom and Hello Direct, which is a manufacturer of telecom headsets for call centers. And a number of years ago, I actually was looking at both of those industries and had an opportunity to make a decision of whether I was going to move forward with those industries or sort of change what I was doing. And I had, through both of those careers, one in sales and IT and operations, watched as electronics across the board sort of commoditized. And I watched the business margins that had started in the 36, 38% range drop down to the teens and at times into the single digits. And I took a step back and said, well, this is much harder to run a business at 4 to 6 points of margin. There's got to be other industries out there to work in, and that led me to finding Brown Furniture as I was starting to look at businesses to purchase. Brown Furniture has been around since 1940. It's 81 years old now. It was started actually by one of the former mayors of West Lebanon, New Hampshire, and state reps as a means to get his rental customers furniture. And it was a business that had survived, obviously, a number of years of ebbs and flows. But in our area, in our market, which is the Upper Valley of New Hampshire and Vermont, it had basically become the last man standing in the furniture market. So we have a nice little niche market here with some competition, but not nearly as much as I'm sure many of the other folks on the line have. And so we have the ability to maintain fairly solid margins and operate a pretty wonderful business. So,
well, that's awesome. Well, for the bulk of today's conversation, we're going to be discussing your ERP journey. So jumping right into that, what were the key business drivers for your ERP evaluation?
Sure. So when I came into the business, and obviously I have had some IT background, not that that's necessary, but I had some IT background. I had actually been a supporter of an ERP system, including NetSuite. So was familiar with the software from before, but the reality was that wasn't a driving force in and of itself. When I got to the business, I found that to be using an industry-specific software package that, to be fair, was grossly outdated. I honestly, on first glance, hadn't been able to tell that it had been updated within the past 20 years. And I was looking at how it handled its costing, how it handled inventory, how it handled really the variations that are dealt with in this industry. Things like fabric, things like finish, nail heads, and all these sort of variations that you have to the same piece of inventory. The software was very lacking in that. And it didn't have a strong team behind it anymore to actually create a better solution or improve it. We would make change requests, and the response back would be, "Oh no, we're not going to make that change. It doesn't make sense for us to do that," which was not acceptable for me, in all honesty. So I started looking at, okay, what ERPs could I go with? Obviously, there's other industry softwares out there. As I looked through them, I didn't find a significant benefit in moving to any of those for the same reasons. They were fairly small niche portions of a much larger company's business portfolio, so they weren't getting any real focus on improving them. As I was looking at other just across the board ERP systems, Dynamics or what have you from Microsoft or any of the others, most of those can be very, very unwieldy. And I had the advantage of having implemented NetSuite a couple different times within organizations that I was in, and I knew what it was capable of. I knew that it would be able to do not only everything that I wanted to do for today, but it would also be able to track and provide me what I needed for going forward. Because my goal is to not stop with just the single store with an attached mattress store, but to actually have multiple stores, and NetSuite can handle that very, very well. So it ended up being the best sense for me.
Thanks, Brad. And I know that scalability is one of the key items that our customers look for when they are evaluating whether or not NetSuite is the right choice. Can you talk a little bit more, stepping back, around your main goals for the ERP platform in general, including scalability, before you ended up deciding on NetSuite?
Sure, absolutely. So one of my goals is I'm structured as an LLC. I have a sort of parent company LLC structure with each store that I own, which at the moment is 2, structured as their own individual LLCs. And one of the things that I wanted to be able to do is find a solution or find a software program that would be able to give me the ability to create an additional store or an additional business, and just create an additional business in the software. And then if I bought another store, I could create just an additional business in the software. And NetSuite has that ability where you have the sort of the one world structure where you can add multiple subsidiaries to a parent company with great ease, and then have all of your financials consolidated at a top level, while still very easily being able to view them individually within the individual businesses. Beyond that, because I'm intending to strictly stick to the furniture and mattress industries, I was looking for something where if I have a product that I'm selling at one store that makes sense in another store, it's very easy to transfer that business and that setup and that structure from one to another. And NetSuite provides the ability to not only create a set of items and inventory products for one business, but you can share them as you would like. You don't have to share them across all of them. You can share them within subgroups as necessary. And that functionality was a great benefit to me as well. One of the other ones, honestly, taking a step back from it, that was very important to me was that because NetSuite is such a large platform used by so many different businesses, it has very strict and standardized financial structure and rules. It is not a one-off and sort of jury rig as you go along. It is built on GAAP financial principles, which is exactly what I wanted in my business. It's the easiest to be able to manage and maintain, and it has that already sort of built in. So you can go into the implementation plan knowing I don't have to touch anything here to make any fixes. It's exactly what I wanted, and it was. Those
Yeah,
really were the top three.
No, and one of the discussions we had when we first partnered with you was your need to be able to grow your business, and you knew the existing software you had was going to have a limit right where it was. You weren't going to be able to add anything else into it, and that was a big key driver. So beyond scalability, can you describe how else your company uses NetSuite?
Sure. So one of the other big factors for me, the last software that we were using had a very mediocre is too positive a word for it. It had a very poor structure for being able to deal with one-off items. This business and the way we're structured, we are very highly structured around special order. Most of my floor, and certainly within COVID as well, but even without COVID, most of my floor is actually nailed, and we special order off of what we have. And people don't buy exactly what piece we have on the floor. They buy it in a different fabric, in a different finish, with nail heads, without nail heads, different backs, different, all of these things. And in the last system we were using, all of those different items within a single manufacturer were built under the same item ID. So if you're selling Lazy Boy as we do, it would just be asterisk Lazy Boy. And it didn't matter if you were selling a recliner special order or if you were selling a sectional special order with power, they were being built under the same item, which means that you had no control and correct visibility to not only what your costs were, because your average costs get completely blown out of the water, but even beyond that, you really have no good visibility to what your turns rate is on an individual item because everything's being sold under a single item. So it was a nightmare for us. So one of the things that Bresatech and NetSuite were able to do is, with a little bit of development work and pre-planning, we actually have created a structure where the item, the base core item for each manufacturer is what it is. And rather than changing that item ID because of a different fabric or a different finish or what have you, those end up being just components, sort of configured items or details within a core item. And
Attributes.
Attributes, thank you. And that allows me now to say, it doesn't really matter how many of a different fabric I sell within a different item. I can see how many of this item am I selling at a different, on a monthly basis or quarterly basis. Beyond that, I still have the ability to create reports very easily that allow me to identify, well, within the sales of this item, what fabrics are the right ones to carry, so that we can actually sort of retroactively revise what we're carrying on our show floor to actually show what people are buying it in the most anyway, which actually drives people's attractiveness, appreciation for the item, and drives sales as well. So.
That's great. You are leading me perfectly into my next question, Brad. In addition to visibility and reporting, what other improvements has Brown Furniture seen since implementing NetSuite? Especially, are there any benefits that you didn't originally anticipate that you gained from the system?
So one of the big benefits that we've had is actually going back on that finance side. We're not a very large business. I generally operate with between 14 and 20 employees, depending on how many delivery people I can maintain, and salespeople. I have a finance department of one person, and in the old system, it would take 10 days for us to be able to finally get to the point where we could close the prior month because there was that much cleanup and only one person really working on it, and it was just a lot of effort. Because of the structure and the way that NetSuite works, it is significantly faster to not only be able to go through and review what has happened for the prior month, but also make corrections to it very easily. The ability to go into a record, and if you've made a mistake on it, fix the mistake and save it, rather than having to completely reverse the transaction and reapply the transaction, is a godsend, because you're reducing the number of documents you have and the amount of effort and work that you've got. Beyond that, the fact that with NetSuite, every single step is its own step, and is this distinct sort of separate piece, actually allows us to much more quickly, because with each step, it's just okay, now we're going to receive. So you hit receive, you save the receipt, now you bill, boom. It's on the sales side, you place the order, you approve the order, now you fulfill the order, now you pick, pack, ship it, and bill it, all these things. If there's ever a mistake in any one of those steps, going back and fixing it is significantly faster, which is a godsend, because we do run very lean. Beyond that, with some of the additional reporting that we've been able to do, we've actually been able to create things like a delivery scheduler within the system itself, so that we can see not only what we have outstanding for a backlog from our vendors, but also very easily, when are we able to actually plan deliveries on those, and what else is going out that same day, and are we planning our routes well and effectively without using a third-party software to do the same thing, which is what we've had to historically do in the past. Rather than going to this other source, we now have it all built in, and that's a huge benefit.
And speaking on that specific need there, when you think about the furniture industry, it's not like you're going to be able to throw a couch into a box and ship it FedEx. So, you had very specific needs around your team doing the delivery. And it was great to be able to partner with you on extending the NetSuite platform to accommodate the very specific way you needed to ship your product. One of the biggest benefits of the NetSuite ecosystem is the extended partner network for implementors. That, along with knowing how lean your technology team was. Can you speak a little bit about your experience with Bresatech?
Sure. Well, I can say that Bresatech's been wonderful, because it's a very standardized and base system in and of itself. It's fairly regular that you want to make certain adjustments to a software. Every implementation, every software implementation has adjustments and changes to it. And because of my IT background, I had some very, very specific things that I wanted us to do. And I knew exactly how I wanted them done. And I was wrong at times. And it was excellent to have somebody who could come in and show me that not only was the basic idea I had solid, but also that this tweak, that tweak, through a back and forth with Patrick as well as developers, we could actually come up with a solution that was even better than initially planned, which was a huge benefit to me. I think the one thing that people do need to be aware of with any implementation, and it is important, is there's a lot of work that you're still going to have to do, and no partner can do that for you. So you do have to sort of have yourself well planned and well laid out, and understand the sort of commitment to making the change that that you need to do. But to try to make this sort of change without a partner, I think would be very difficult. It's much better to have a partner because they're able to do a lot of the work for you, and take sort of that workload off of you, so you can continue doing your day job of running a store.
Brad, you already touched on one customization that Bresatech did earlier around item configurations. Can you touch on any other extended functionality that they helped you build out in your NetSuite environment?
Sure, absolutely. So they made some work on the scheduler, as I discussed. There was work with so one of the things that we needed to be able to do is create special price tags that not only would show what our sales price is just for the regular show floor, but also fairly easily allow us to show different prices if we needed to. Like, instead of being the MSRP price for mattresses, maybe it's our everyday price, but when we have a sale, we can just sort of tweak a field and bring in a different value very easily. That's a huge benefit.
I think one of the other ones, Brad, that probably in the furniture industry is pretty apropos, is the process. We took one of your processes for PO consolidation. NetSuite typically wants to align one PO with one special order, but that was not really the way your business runs. If you want to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. So one of the important things, and this is certainly true with a lot of the major manufacturers, is, you know, over the course of a week, you're going to have a number of sales within a given manufacturer, and obviously you want to put all of those onto one PO, so you're saving freight rates. And so we actually created a consolidator to the PO system, which would actually allow us to basically go to each vendor card and press a button, and it would look out at every single purchase order that was outstanding that hadn't been placed yet, and put that all into one PO for us. Actually, beyond that, one of the other things that we have, which is necessary for us because of the variation to inventory, we have a unique identifier, a stock number, or a serialization, an internal serialization of every single item that comes in. And one of the things that Bresatech has been able to work on is, especially with COVID, but even beyond that, frequently our salespeople will be selling for a product that is on a purchase order, but it isn't physically received yet. And so it was very important to be able to come up with a solution where the salesperson could identify, I'm taking in this pending piece of stock and assigning it to this sale, so that nobody else could then sell it and
Furniture reservation system.
Yeah, it is. It's a reservation system for a sales order, which is of huge benefit.
No, that's great. And, you know, there were a number of special customizations that we did. Again, most of them begat from, you know, your very clear vision of how you needed the business to run. Now that you are in NetSuite, you've seen what we've been able to expand upon the native NetSuite capability. How do you envision NetSuite and Bresatech are going to be able to enhance your future growth?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think that some of the things that we'll be able to do going forward is actually going to be, once we actually get to that next step of adding additional businesses, because I'm sure there's going to be some need to work a little bit in the system to be able to say, okay, product A, product line A, manufacturer A, is being sold in store A and B, but not C and D. And product B is in A and D, but not B and C. So that sort of capability is going to be very huge. from a NetSuite component, being able to get a consolidated view of all of the business's sales for each vendor is going to be obviously enormous, because that's what will provide us leverage over the long haul with each of those vendors. So, and I guess, one of the things people need to realize with NetSuite that's of a huge benefit is it's not a stagnant system. It gets updated twice a year, every year, no matter what. There's small tweaks, there's small changes that improve the overall business, that because it is a live, active, maintained system, there's a huge benefit in that for the long haul for our business as well.
Thanks, Brad. A last question for the interview portion. And just as a reminder, we already did see one question come through the chat, but if you have any other questions for Brad, please submit your questions in the chat. Last question for you, Brad, before we jump into some questions from the audience. We've talked a lot about your growth goals and how NetSuite and Bresatech will help you achieve those. Anything else you want to share around what's next for Brown Furniture?
Oh, goodness. I think next, I mean, I hate to answer it with what I've already answered, but next is going to be taking that next step and buying that third and fourth business. I feel like we've been able to successfully get through the bulk of the wave of COVID and the enormous backlog issues, which will still be running for probably another year or so, but at least we've been able to maintain ourselves, so we're in a position where we can ride the wave out, and then start really looking at taking those next moves. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's pretty much the questions that we knew that we wanted to cover. There are a few that have rolled in through the Q&A, so I will officially start that now. This one from Jason. Thanks for the discussion, guys. Brad, thanks for your time today. He has 4 questions. First one, what is your costing method?
So we use average cost right now.
Yeah. They also asked if you used light, premium, or advanced manufacturing.
I don't use any form of manufacturing whatsoever.
Yeah, your business really wasn't. Some furniture businesses are building those things, but yours was mostly, just a different model where it really didn't involve manufacturing.
Yeah. Brown Furniture is Brown Furniture and America's Mattress, which is the second store that we have. They are both pure retail. We don't build anything. The closest thing to a build we have is sort of a kit structure where we consolidate items for a pricing perspective for the customer, but it's not the same as manufacturer. So I really can't speak to that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when I see that question in this context, they're imagining what we've kind of done with your configurator, because you are ordering these things to be built, but you're not the one building it. You just needed a way to specifically, spread out the specific attributes as you place the order.
We needed to be able to identify, if there was 15 different attributes to a single sofa or a recliner, each one of those variations, so that we could correctly identify them back to the manufacturer and say, no, this is exactly what you were building for us for this item. But for our internal reporting perspective, be able to have a visibility to, at the simplest, how many times have we sold that frame?
Right. Yeah.
So, or that fabric.
They also had a question about how you handle rolls of fabric as inventory, but I also believe that's not something you do.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, we receive fabric for customers, comm orders, customer-owned material, where we buy fabric from one manufacturer and then send it to a different manufacturer so that they can do a build with it. And we literally have created just an item structure of this manufacturer, this fabric at this yardage for these various prices. That's actually one of the, and that's actually of some benefit to understand, is with the configuration tool, the attribute tool that we built, we were actually able to, for say, the 1,000 fabrics that La-Z-Boy has, say 500 of them are of a B grade value. Well, that's at a baseline cost. It doesn't impact the cost of the product whatsoever. But as you move through to your Ds and Js and Ks fabrics, the grades of the fabrics, we actually were able to assign a
cost
for that, a custom cost for that component piece, so that it will actually add in an additional cost to the item when we sell it with those customizations. Same thing for nail heads. If you go with a product that has nail heads and you remove it, there might be a cost of that. There's also a cost increase if you change the nail heads or add nail heads to something that doesn't have it. And that's all handled through our configuration tool, while still being able to consolidate the POs back to the vendor and the items to the vendor so that they can see them easily and understand what we're asking them to build.
No, totally understand. The last question from Jason is, it sounds like you're using matrix items.
Not actually. It would be similar to a matrix item. The issue or the problem with matrix items ends up being, if you think about a manufacturer, we carry Smith Brothers, right? So we've got maybe 20 different frames that have 2,000 different fabrics and 15 different options for finishes and different legs that you can put on them and different backs and different arms and all of these different customizations, because they're a special order house. Everything they do is exactly what the customer wants. To build that into a matrix item would have caused such complexity that it really would run very slowly at the end of the day. The amount of calculation work that the system would have to do would overwhelm it because of the volume of different variations you could have. Instead, what this does is actually just look at a table worth of fabric data and say, okay, well, you've gone with this fabric. I need to upcharge based on this many seats on this sofa. Oh, you've gone with this different change. I need to upcharge based on this many seats to this sofa, and it just works its way through that way. And then we do a simple calculation based on the cost at what our MSRP and what our everyday price would be.
No, that's right. Next question. What integrations have you implemented with NetSuite?
So not a ton of them. We initially had implemented Dispatch Track, but we actually decided that it wasn't of enough benefit to maintain it. If at the current rate right now, we only sell to effectively 2 states, New Hampshire and Vermont, and only Vermont has sales tax. So I'm not doing a ton of taxation structure. If I did, I would probably be going with a business like Avalara, which does tax management very, very well. Beyond that, we looked at for a little while whether or not we were going to use some barcode software from a couple different vendors. At the end of the day, because my barcode needs are so simplistic, it didn't actually make sense to go forward with either of those, although I don't recommend against it. It's just we're not that huge of a business. And actually, I should mention that just because I'm sure it will put things into context for everybody. We are, between the 2 stores combined, about $4 million a year. We are almost a boutique store for a furniture store, in that we have 18,000 square feet total sales floor space. I don't have a ton of different vendors. I sell a lot of each vendor I have and try to be as important to each of my vendors as I can be, but I just don't have the square footage to be everything to everybody. We start at the middle level of market and we go up from there. probably Smith being the highest that we sell.
Right. Yeah. Do you have any advice for someone going through an ERP evaluation?
Oh goodness, sure. So one of the things, and this is not a knock against NetSuite or Bresatech or anybody in the industry. However much time you think it's going to take, you're wrong. It's longer than that. Because you only have so much bandwidth ever to throw at these sort of solutions. And it just always ends up taking a little bit longer. As a general rule, I'd say add 3 months to what your plan is and start 3 months earlier than when you absolutely need to go live. That would be my number one. Right off the bat, give yourself more time than you think you need. The second one I would suggest is one of the things that I find a lot of people probably need to spend more time in, and I know that we probably could have done a better job of spending more time on, is spend time on training all of your employees as thoroughly as you can. We have a group of employees in our sales team that I wanted to sort of spoon feed over time. And I've found that at the end of the day, they could have used more of a fire hose than I gave them, and would have been okay. They're constantly asking more questions than we really have the bandwidth to provide them the answers and help them move to the next level. So plan in more training time for everybody who you think needs it. And the other thing I would strongly recommend is go through the system as you're looking at it and how it works, completely ignoring how your last system did things, because it doesn't matter. You're not using that system anymore, and you're trying to get away from that system. Mm-hmm. So look at how the new system does work, and does that work for you? And if it does, use it. Standardized functionality always runs better than something that you have to special code. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, and as a partner, we would constantly look at every phase of your business and ask, all right, does NetSuite best practice really suit this better? And there were a lot of cases where it did, as opposed to some of the certain situations, especially for your competitive advantage, where your process is something that we wanted to put extra energy into to expand on. One question came in, are the majority of the extended functionalities, the PO consolidation, the item configurator, the SO reservation, are those natively integrated into NetSuite, or were they third-party applications?
No, they're right in NetSuite. They are right in our daily system. We actually go straight to a customer card and start off our ordering process right from there. If somebody is ordering case good product, we just go straight to a sales order. And if they're ordering upholstery or something that is configurable, they go to the configuration tool to sort of build out the product before putting it into a quote or sales order.
Yeah, just a mix of native NetSuite, extended tools, workflows, scripts, suitelets, searches.
Yeah, but all within NetSuite itself.
So here's a great question.
It's a great question. Not yet.
Well, I mean, it's because this one I could see why it would be asked. Do you have a website, and how is it integrated if?
Sure. I have a terribly old website that doesn't look like it's been updated since the 90s, because I don't think it's been updated since the 90s. I am not proud of that. That's actually our next project here at Brown Furniture, is to fix that. So we've actually been looking at 2 different solutions in that area, though, because that, I know, is our next project. One was going directly with NetSuite's native capabilities for
SCA,
for website building and just have our website right out of NetSuite. At my business volume, it doesn't make sense to do that. So we're probably going to be going with something more along the lines of a Shopify solution or something along those lines to create that integrated purchasing capability, which we currently do not have, wish we did. But I can say, just regardless of that, we will have the ability, I am sure, to fairly easily integrate things like customer shipping information, where their order status is, sort of that customer visibility that we certainly don't have right now.
Well, and the benefit of having NetSuite as your central source of all your information is running your entire business, your entire database is in there now. That would, in my mind, be a fairly, logical extension. Whereas coming at it from the other way, trying to get unlike systems to communicate with, you've already got a great base. So communicating with whatever, external website you want to go with.
And even beyond that, and to your point, right, because it is a solid point, one of the great benefits is when you have an update to prices and you have sort of a cost change and you have to re-import a price update to items. Well, as soon as that's done within your native NetSuite system, it's done on your NetSuite website as well, because it's the same system. So it's a significantly smaller amount of work that has to be handled because it's all just being done once.
Yeah, and the back end's already got all the logic in it. It would treat that, the front end as just another salesperson. Looks like the last question's trickled in. What would you use for a catalog source? I think they mean item master.
Oh, I mean, I went to each of the manufacturers and basically hounded my vendor reps to provide me with Excel sheets of their price information. So I went to each of the manufacturers that we carried to get catalogs of everything that they have. And I actually built in basically every item that we carry. So, we carry Klossner. I put in over 9,000 items worth of Klossner, and then they dropped outdoor. And so now I've got to remove about 2,500 pieces of Klossner from the system. On the positive side for us, that's just doing an import to say these items are now inactive.
Exactly.
But I just went to the manufacturers and to my sales reps and said, look, I need this. I need it in an Excel format. And I really didn't have very much pushback, but for a couple of people who had fairly small catalogs, honestly.
Well, that's great. That does it for the Q&A portion of today's seminar, session. But Brad, I personally want to thank you again for coming on and sharing your journey and your experience with us. It's as a partner of yours in this journey, it's you've been a real pleasure to work with. So,
well, happy to help.